pleasure to join you all. What amazing timing. You can see from my title, I did take an extra handful of happy pills for breakfast this morning because in the wake of Boris's announcement yesterday and then a further announcement today, quite difficult to focus on the opportunities, to be upbeat, but I'm going to do my best. So there are always opportunities. There's lots of platitudes I could share with you about silver linings out of clouds, all that sort of stuff. But I'm going to try and focus on prospering in times of uncertainty. Have we ever had more uncertainty than we currently have? Opportunities for food producers, but we can't sugarcoat the fact that this is incredibly challenging. And therefore there are some threats, and I'll try and get them out of the way so we can focus on the opportunities as much as we can. So now that's interesting. There we go. So I'm Professor of Value Chain Management at Norwich Business School at UEA. Spent 30 years working up and down the food chain with stakeholders from pretty much everywhere, from input supply all the way through to retail, government agencies, and I spent the last 15-16 years working on a project called Who Buys My Food, which gives us access to Tesco club card data, which we share for free with SMEs across the country to help them get a better understanding of who's buying their products and how they respond when things change. And that's informed a lot of my research. I'm going to focus on principles, process, share with you some evidence from some recent research we've conducted over the summer on the impact of coronavirus, and then share with you my perceptions about what the future holds and what SMEs in particular need to do to grasp the opportunities. We've got a whole a number of entrepreneurs and innovators to follow who'll be sharing with you their practice, and my hope is that what they do and what they've done and how they've achieved success is aligned with many of the principles and processes that I want to share with you. So I'm going to briefly look back at what we've been through in the last 3-4 months, highlight the winners and the losers, and particularly the characteristics of the winners, because we're upbeat on opportunities here. I'm then going to look forward and wrap up with a couple of references to how the UEA is seeking to help businesses across the region. And if I have 30 seconds left, I've got 4 slides, which are my final thoughts. If I run out of time, I can bring them back maybe in the panel discussion. So looking back, we have experienced this black swan event, the systemic shock that many argue they saw coming, but the reality is the majority of us didn't, and it has changed the world forever. And what I want to emphasize here is that there have been and there continues to be winners and losers. Retailers have gained largely at the expense of food service for reasons that we understand, and much of this stuff I'm sure you're familiar with. Independents have gained at the expense of supermarkets. This is a critical point, and arguably only temporarily. And what COVID has done is to accelerate a number of established trends. So retailers were already in the process of rationalizing their products, and that has been accelerated. There had been a demand for increased investment in e-commerce. The lack of investment meant that for the first few weeks of lockdown, we saw the food industry struggle, and SMEs came to our rescue, and subsequently the incumbents have loaded up their armory. They've invested heavily in people and infrastructure to ensure that in the future they'll be better able to support what would be a much larger share of the market. More businesses are losing more money and faster, including those in e-commerce. Consumers want to buy online. Consumers have to buy online if they're not allowed to leave their houses, but not very many people make any money out of it. And that's a real challenge when demand is asking for something that supply can't make money out from. Omni-channel continues to grow, so it's bricks and clicks, not bricks to clicks. I don't see a reason for that to change, and COVID clearly accelerated that process. Convenience and value have for many years been the major consumer drivers and are inevitably going to remain that way, particularly as we grapple with the oncoming recession and lockdown light, or whatever that transpires to be the next wave of the pandemic. But there is a growing interest in community schemes. People are, their awareness of the importance of food, where it comes from, how it's produced, and just how fragile the food system is, has definitely been raised by the pandemic. And Gen Y and Gen Z, people that many of us at the wrong end of the age distribution struggle to understand, hold the key to deeper and wider digital integration. The future is digital, whether we like it or not, and Generation Y and Generation Z, the younger consumers, are where we have to pay more attention if we're going to grasp those opportunities. So the winners and losers, how am I going to cover this piece? So 3 bits of research, and I'm just going to scratch the surface here. You can imagine I've only got 15 minutes left. I'm going to share with you a couple of the slides that capture some evidence from our Who Buys My Food project. This is Tesco data. We then commissioned some research from 2 local service providers, Judy Randon at Insight 6 and Carol Ratheffer, who conducted some retail audits and some focus groups to understand better what was going on in stores and in the minds of shoppers during the pandemic. So this first slide, what on earth is this about? Well, first of all, let me draw to your attention. On the left-hand axis, we've got change in sales. So this is the winners and the losers, pretty much equally distributed, those that gained and those that lost in the 3 months during the crisis. And on the horizontal axis, we've got the number of stores selling. So the winners and losers are both large companies that have lots of stores and small companies, but you will see the mass over here is companies with limited distribution. So we've got a denser mass of losing businesses that are smaller in terms of scale and distribution. Overall, sales declined by 3.5%, but they increased by 2/3 online. However, that was 2/3 up from a very low base. This second slide is designed to, and what both of these slides are trying to do is that actually there's devil in the detail. So here we've got change in online sales on the horizontal axis and change in total sales on the vertical axis. And what we find overall, 42% of companies gained both online and in store. So online sales aren't big enough to transform your business if you're a major player. And actually a successful business is successful because they're good at both, supporting this notion of omni-channel. That's even higher for dairy and meat. That 42% is in total, and I just chose a couple of subcategories to highlight the differences. And on the left-hand side, we've got 32% failed, declined, both in online and in total. That was less in the terms of dairy and meat. And this little group over here, these are people that have lost overall but gained online. And so emphasizing the importance of not giving up on and losing sight of bricks and mortar, even though for a significant period during the lockdown we had no option. Characteristics of the products behind those charts. So winning brands, the ones that are the dots that are appearing on the right hand side, the ones that are growing the fastest over this period, are relevant and distinctive. So wherever they're made available, people want to buy them. They stand out from the crowd. They were able to retain and in some cases increase their distribution with their retail customers when their competitors were being relegated or delisted. And that outcome was engineered not by chance, by targeted allocation of resources to ensure that customers, retail buyers and consumers, the final consumer, were only ever given reasons to reward them and never given an opportunity to switch. I'm going to come back to the importance of that shortly. In terms of retail, the retail distributors and their performance, so this is a couple of summary slides from the mystery shopping trips that we did. So we gave people some money to go and buy some ingredients for a typical meal, and they rated those services on a number of KPIs. And actually what they discovered was across the country, across distribution channels, the experience was pretty good. And the one standout there was that the extent to which retailers have struggled to maintain the presentation in their stores during the pandemic. But what is striking is this, some of you may be familiar with something called the Net Promoter Score. So how likely are you to recommend that retailer to your friends, the things that really matter? And this is one for Doug, because The ones that come out with the highest net promoter score are the regional independent supermarkets, already an element of focusing on their region, engaging with their local and regional customers. And here we start to see some of the vulnerabilities in the SMEs. So much lower scores for direct from the farm to consumers, farm shops, haphazard, poorly organized, poor service, and the newbies, the aggregators that are coming in to bring the producers to the consumers. So the incumbents, the multiple supermarkets, plenty of room for improvement. Regional supermarkets doing really, really well, and particularly vulnerable, those independent retailers, specialist offers. As far as consumers are concerned, why do they shop? This is Gen Y, Gen Z. Why do they shop at independent stores? They trust the ethical and environmental credentials of the supplier. They look for something special, quality taste, the range is exciting, local or domestic produce in abundance, and they feel good about supporting the local community. They want to reduce waste and packaging, less concerned about price and promotions and convenience. They will sacrifice some of that, but likely that's going to change in the next 6 months. Whereas on the supermarkets, look at the top of the list is price, promotions and convenience. I buy online from supermarkets because they're cheap and they're convenient. And I don't shop from supermarkets if I expect to buy products that are ethically produced or pay particular attention to animal welfare. Click. There we go. So looking forward, the focus is shifting from the pandemic to the recession, the ripple effect. Arguably that's just changed with the recent announcement, but I think we're struggling, all of us, with how much attention should be paid to one or the other. I still think the focus is shifting more and more towards the economic impact of this, which is why behaviour is the way it is, and why we're now seeing a return to some austerity with respect to the lockdown. So testing the result of those switched from mainstream brands, mainstream retail to differentiated products. More downward pressure on prices and margins is inevitable as Tesco and Amazon slug it out for dominance in the marketplace. Announcements every day that we won't be beaten on price, and they'll expect most of that to come from suppliers. So we can't ignore the fact that was already happening, and it's just going to be accelerated and make life incredibly difficult for suppliers. Understanding the detail of who's buying what, when and how they respond to changes in the offer is a critical success factor. So I'm now moving into what it's going to take to capture some of the opportunities moving forward. Retention. Many of you will have seen an increase in sales. Many independent retailers saw an increase in sales and already will have seen some of those increases starting to break away. So retention is the fundamental challenge. Consumers are willing to support small local food producers, and a subset of those who've converted are willing to pay more, but you've got to keep telling them why. You can't give them the opportunity to transgress. Collaboration, I believe, is so misunderstood and so underutilized amongst small food producers, not just farmers, but all along the supply chain, to provide a more convenient and engaging shopping experience, reduce the costs of distribution, invest in customer loyalty, and to get into the data. The devil is in the detail. You've got to know who's buying your products, where it's doing well, why it's doing well, so you can target more of the people that might be inclined to repeat purchase. The window of opportunity is closing fast, and the major players are much better equipped to deal with what I'm referring to as lockdown light. So relevance is everything. Your customer, which still for many of us, if not most of us actually, is a retailer, more pressure than ever. They want their suppliers to understand Tesco wants suppliers to them to understand what the Tesco shopper is looking for. And the consumers who shop in Tesco want the things that are relevant to them. So customized market intelligence. You need to get data and insight from specific distribution channels and specific customers, including the ones that come direct to you. Who are these people? And SMEs are particularly vulnerable, limited resources, and often, it has to be said, lack strategic orientation. The more limited the resources are, the more important it is to target them. You can't afford to hit and hope. As not a very good golfer, you can't afford to just hope and pray that things will get better. You've got to embrace the opportunity. People will buy your products. Most SMEs don't need huge market shares. They don't need millions of people. They've just got to target the right areas. Less is more. So retailers are quite clear. They want fewer products, they want fewer suppliers, and they have got less people to deal with, the suppliers and the customers. Rationalize, rationalize, rationalize. Suppliers, are you caught in the headlights or are you lost in the fog? Or do you have a very clear vision of the future? If ever there is a need for strategic clarity, it is now. Strategy is everything. At least there has to be one. So data, technology is a means to an end. Your journey begins with strategy. And so many SMEs, in my experience over 30 years working with hundreds of SMEs across the country and indeed the world, they don't have a piece of paper or a file that's got strategic plan written on it. Strategic plans can change, but they must exist because they drive the way you allocate resources. So, and the ones that really matter are marketing orientation. There's a conflict that most SMEs, in my experience, grapple with, which is short-term sales orientation versus longer-term marketing orientation. Sales orientation is about survival. So clearly we have to survive, but you can't just focus on short-term sales and not be thinking about the longer term. Otherwise, the longer term actually won't come. So am I fit for purpose in the long term? Not can I simply survive. I don't think we really want him defending our shores, do you? So decades of research has provided us with evidence that the stronger the market orientation, the more aware you are of your customers, your consumers, and your competitors. The closer the fit with whoever your key customers are, you better have some key ones, not just hundreds of people that you don't know where they are or what they want, but take your products from you, the better the performance. So they're more satisfied, sales grow faster, profitability is greater, and there's an absence of delisted products. Sales orientation statistically has no impact on performance, which is the focus on short-term distribution. For SMEs, wholesalers are often seen as the saviors. In my opinion, they're often the single biggest problem because they act as the barrier between the producer and the customer. In my experience, the vast majority of wholesale distributors will not share with producers who their customers are, where their sales are the greatest, for fear that those SMEs are going to bypass them and go direct to the customer. So you're being starved of critical data if you rely solely on wholesale distributors who've got far too many customers and far too many suppliers to really understand or get to grips with who is buying what and why. It also ends up with a lack of commitment, a lack of investment in market intelligence, which weakens the relationship with the buyer. So when companies say to me, the way to protect ourselves is to have lots of customers, my simple answer is you are in danger of being irrelevant to lots of people because you don't have the resources to focus on them all. So focus, focus, focus is a key message that I'm sharing with you. And just because you've been trading for a long time with somebody doesn't mean to say you're going to stay in business. And I'm conscious that we're coming to the end. So what does it take? 3 case studies that will be made available to you from the Rise website support this kind of framework that I've used for many, many years. And you'll see we've got a $1 billion global brand in Zespri. They're the biggest exporter of kiwi fruit in the world, turning over 30 billion, I think it was, in last year. Manbaloo, 200 million Australian dollars exporting mangoes, and Dingley Dell, exporting their value-added pork products globally, except that they're not anymore. So grew their business with huge success up until February, and then what did they do? Well, they didn't just stop because they had a strategy which was already well in place, which was to go into partnership to launch an e-commerce platform with their charcuterie range. 3 great case studies that it explains to you how that model that you can see on the page works. And I would urge you to read those case studies at your leisure after this event. They're written for practitioners, they're not academics. Customer and consumer insight, a genuine, unique selling proposition, attention to detail, passion for perfection, collaboration at the heart of the business. Dingley Dell, a small pig producer on our doorstep, does this par excellence and in just the same way as Zespri, a global player, does across the world. How can we help at UEA? My last slide, or skip my final thoughts. Please reach out to Liz Davis, who's leading up our Gateway to Growth program, which will help you engage with our incredible graduates and provides an internship facility that is free of charge for a short period of time. And Kenny Lang, who runs the ERA project, which also will help you to apply for grants for internships and innovation vouchers to see your way through the pandemic and see your way towards a sustainable future. My final thoughts I'll keep because I realise now I'm out of time. Tim.